Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at a concept that I think is going to resonate with just about everybody. Because who doesn't like to take the easy way out, right? I mean, we're going to be diving into this tendency that I think we all have to gravitate towards the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that it's not just laziness. There's like a scientific reason for it. It's something that's kind of built into our biology, I think.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, and this idea, it's often called the law of least effort. And it pops up, everywhere, from our individual habits to like the rise and fall of civilizations.
Wow. So we're talking like big picture stuff here, not just like, choosing the shortest line at the grocery store.
Exactly. It's a fundamental principle that influences so much of what we do and how the world works. And that's why we wanted to dedicate a whole deep dive to really explore this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah.
One of the things that really caught my eye when we were prepping for this was that example from Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, where he talks about how the shape of continents actually influenced the spread of agriculture. I mean, can you unpack that for us a little bit? How does geography play into all of this?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. So Diamond argues that the fact that Eurasia, the big landmass that includes Europe and Asia, is oriented east-west had a huge impact on the spread of agriculture.
Okay, so I'm picturing a map in my head here.
Right. So because Eurasia is oriented east-west, you have these vast stretches of land with similar climates. That means that crops and livestock and even ideas could spread much more easily because they weren't encountering these huge shifts in climate and terrain.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like the path of least resistance for agriculture.
Exactly. And Diamond contrasts that with the Americas, which are oriented north-south. So you have these drastic changes in climate from, Arctic conditions in the north to tropical rainforests in the south. And that made it much harder for crops and ideas to spread.
So it wasn't just coincidence that civilizations in Eurasia developed more rapidly. They had this geographic advantage.
Exactly. The very layout of the land gave them a head start.
Okay, so that's like the big picture historical stuff.
Yeah.
But how does this principle of least effort play out in our own lives, like in our brains? How are we wired for this?
Well, our brains are incredibly energy intensive. They're constantly working, even when we're not consciously thinking about anything. And from an evolutionary standpoint, conserving energy was crucial for survival.
Makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want to waste precious energy if you don't have to.
Right. So our brains are wired to look for shortcuts, to find ways to do things with the least amount of mental and physical effort possible.
So like, even though we might know that there's a better way to do something, if it requires a lot of effort, our brains are like, nah, let's just go with the easy option.
Exactly. It's not about being lazy. It's about our brains being incredibly efficient at conserving energy.
Okay, so that makes sense. But isn't that kind of working against us if we want to achieve our goals?
Yeah.
If our brains are always looking for the easy way out.
That's where understanding this principle becomes so powerful. It's not about giving in to the easiest option all the time. It's about recognizing this tendency and then strategically designing our lives to work with it, not against it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So instead of trying to force ourselves to do things we hate, we can set things up so that the things we want to do are actually the easiest options.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Think of it like engineering for less friction in your life.
Friction.
Yeah. Any obstacle that makes a behavior harder to perform is friction. And we can make good habits easier by reducing that friction, and we can increase friction for those bad habits that we're trying to break.
Okay, so it's like we're kind of hacking our own brains using this principle.
Precisely. We're playing to our strengths.
I'm loving this. But I need some examples to really wrap my head around this.
Okay, well, one simple example is unplugging your TV after each use.
Okay, that doesn't seem too hard.
Right. But that little bit of friction, having to plug it back in every time you want to watch, makes you pause for a second and consider whether you really want to watch TV right now.
So it's like a built-in moment of mindfulness.
Exactly. It's not about relying on willpower. It's about designing your environment to nudge you in the right direction.
Love it. What are some other examples of this friction engineering?
Something as simple as laying out your workout clothes the night before removes that decision-making hurdle in the morning.
So you're not standing there half asleep trying to decide what to wear.
Right. You've already made the decision. And
Wait.
you're making it easier to just get up and go.
Okay, so this is starting to click for me. It's like creating a path of least resistance for the things we want to do.
Exactly. And by doing that, we're harnessing the power of this natural tendency instead of fighting against it.
This is really cool. I'm already starting to think about all the ways I can apply this in my own life.
It's amazing how much of a difference these small tweaks can make And that's what's so exciting about this principle. It's not about making drastic changes. It's about understanding ourselves and working with our natural tendencies to create a life that's a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, and a lot more fulfilling.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our listeners are already thinking about all the ways they can apply this in their own lives, too.
Mm,
This is definitely a deep dive that's going to stay with me.
me too.
So we've covered a lot of ground already, but there's so much more to explore. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be diving deeper into the law of least effort and looking at how this principle plays out in our social lives, our decision-making processes, and even in our search for meaning.
I can't wait. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how we can engineer our environment to make good habits easier. But how far can we take this idea?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, too. Like, we talked about prepping workout clothes and unplugging the TV. But what about, like, our social lives? Does the law of least effort influence who we choose to spend time with?
Absolutely. It's human nature to gravitate towards relationships and social circles that require less effort. We seek out people who share similar values and perspectives because it reduces the friction in our social interactions.
So it's like finding our social comfort zone where we don't have to constantly explain ourselves or engage in these, like, heated debates.
Right. We can just be ourselves with less effort.
I mean, that sounds pretty good. But could this tendency to seek social ease also, like, limit our personal growth?
That's a great point. It's important to be aware of how this preference for social ease can lead us to these echo chambers where we're only exposed to like-minded individuals.
Right. We don't want to get stuck in a bubble.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance, minimizing unnecessary friction while still embracing challenges that help us expand our perspectives.
Okay, so it's like finding that sweet spot where our social interactions feel effortless, but also challenge us to think differently.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've talked about habits and social dynamics, but what about decision-making? Does the law of least effort play a role there too?
Oh, absolutely. Think about all those times when you make a choice based on what's easiest in the moment. Even if you know deep down it might not be the best decision in the long run.
Oh, yeah. Like choosing takeout over cooking a healthy meal.
Exactly. Or hitting that snooze button instead of going for that morning run.
Oh, man. I'm so guilty of that. It's like my brain is wired for instant gratification.
Right. We all have those moments.
But is there a way to outsmart this tendency?
One effective strategy is to anticipate those moments of weakness and pre-commit to a better choice.
Okay, so like if I know I'm going to be tempted to order takeout, I should plan my meals in advance.
Exactly. Or if the snooze button is your nemesis, put your alarm across the room so you have to physically get out of bed to turn it off.
I love those practical tips. It's like outsmarting my own brain. Okay, so we've covered how the law of least effort shows up in our habits, our social circles, and even our decision-making. But is there a downside to this principle? Could this constant striving for ease, like, lead us astray in some way?
That's a really important question. While this law can be a powerful tool for efficiency and productivity, it's crucial to be aware of its potential pitfalls. If we become too focused on minimizing effort, we might miss out on opportunities for growth and innovation that lie outside our comfort zones.
So always taking the easy route could make us resistant to change.
Exactly. We could end up stuck in a rut, even if it's not truly fulfilling.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And is there anything else we should be wary of?
Another potential downside is that this pursuit of ease, if not balanced with careful consideration, could unintentionally reinforce negative biases or societal inequalities.
Oh, wow. That's a really important point. Could you give an example of how that might happen?
Sure. Let's imagine a company hiring for a new addition. If they rely solely on automated resume screening tools that prioritize specific keywords or academic backgrounds, it could unintentionally exclude qualified candidates from diverse backgrounds or those with unconventional career paths.
That's a great example. It highlights the need for thoughtful consideration, even when using tools and systems that are designed for efficiency.
Right.
So while the law of least effort is a powerful tool, it's clearly not a one-size-fits-all solution. It seems like finding the right balance is key.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing both the benefits and potential pitfalls and applying this principle thoughtfully and strategically.
We've talked about the potential downsides, but I'm also curious about the flip side. Are there instances where embracing the law of least effort actually leads to positive social change or even sparks innovation?
That's a fantastic question. One example that comes to mind is the concept of universal design in architecture and product development.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
So universal design is about creating environments and products that are accessible to people with a wide range of abilities and disabilities. But what's interesting is that many of the features that were originally designed to accommodate people with disabilities have ended up benefiting everyone.
Oh, I see. Like what kind of features?
For example, ramps and curb cuts were initially designed to make it easier for people in wheelchairs to navigate sidewalks. But now they're used by everyone. Parents with strollers, delivery personnel, even skateboarders.
It's amazing how those features initially designed to address a specific need ended up benefiting a much wider group of people.
Exactly. Designing for those facing the most challenges often creates solutions that benefit everyone. It's a perfect example of how minimizing effort for one group can lead to greater accessibility and inclusivity for all.
That's such a powerful illustration of the positive impact this principle can have.
Huh?
Are there any other examples of the law of least effort driving positive change?
Think about how user-friendly interfaces and intuitive designs have revolutionized technology. By reducing the effort required to use computers and smartphones, we've empowered people of all ages and backgrounds to connect, learn, and create.
That's true. It's so much easier to use technology now than it was even a few years ago.
Exactly. And it's a testament to how making things easier to use can have a truly profound impact.
It's incredible how these seemingly simple changes can create such wide-reaching ripple effects.
Absolutely. It speaks to the interconnectedness of everything.
Mhm.
A small change in one area can have unexpected and positive consequences in others. We've explored this law of least effort from so many angles today. Its historical significance, its presence in our brains, its applications in our daily lives, and even its potential for both positive and negative outcomes. But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much more to unpack here.
What other aspects of this principle do you think are worth exploring?
I'm fascinated by the idea of how technology, which is designed to make things easier, is shaping our relationship with effort itself. Like, as technology continues to advance and automate more tasks, how will that impact our perception of effort? Will we become so accustomed to ease and convenience that we lose our ability to persevere through challenges?
That's a really thought-provoking question, and it leads to a much broader philosophical question about the nature of effort and its role in human flourishing. Is effort inherently valuable, or is it something to be minimized? These are questions that philosophers have debated for centuries, and they're becoming even more relevant in our modern world.
Wow, this conversation has really challenged me to think deeply about the law of least effort. It's clearly not just about taking the easy route, but about understanding a fundamental principle that shapes our behavior choices and even society as a whole.
Exactly. By understanding this principle, we can harness its power while also being mindful of its potential downsides. It's a constant balancing act between minimizing unnecessary effort and embracing those challenges that push us to grow and evolve.
This has been such an insightful exploration. We've covered so much ground already. But I'm realizing there's still more to discuss. We haven't even touched on how this principle might play out in creative pursuits or in our search for meaning and purpose. I think a part 3 to this deep dive is in order.
I agree. There's so much more to unravel. I'm eager to continue this conversation with you and our listeners.
Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back soon with even more insights and thought-provoking discussions about the law of least effort. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been exploring this idea of the law of least effort and how it shapes our habits, our relationships, even our world. But now I'm kind of curious to see how this idea of minimizing effort plays out in something like creativity. And even in our search for meaning. It seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, it's a fascinating intersection. At first glance, the law of least effort might seem completely at odds with creativity. Because, creative endeavors often demand that we push beyond our comfort zones. We experiment, we embrace the unknown. But there's this really fascinating dynamic between effort and reward that can actually fuel creative pursuits.
Okay, so you're telling me that there's a way to be creative and still follow the law of least effort.
Oh, all ours.
Think about that feeling you get, that sense of accomplishment after you've tackled a challenging project, whether it's writing a song or solving a complex problem or even learning a new skill. That sense of fulfillment, that flow state that comes from pushing your boundaries, it's a really powerful motivator.
So it's not about avoiding effort entirely. It's more about understanding that certain types of effort, even though they might be challenging in the moment, can actually lead to these incredibly rewarding experiences. Exactly, and that's where this concept of meaningful effort comes in. When we're engaged in activities that really resonate with our values, our passions, our sense of purpose, that effort feels different. It's not a burden. It's an investment.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. So when we feel a sense of purpose,
Mm,
we're more willing to put in the effort, even if it's tough,
yeah.
because we see the bigger picture of what we're creating or contributing to.
Exactly. And here's how the law of least effort can actually work in our favor. Once we've identified those activities that really light us up, we can leverage this principle to optimize our environment, our routines, our habits, to support those endeavors.
Okay, so it's like we're clearing the path. We're removing any unnecessary obstacles so we can really channel our energy into the work that truly matters to us.
Precisely. It's about being intentional. It's
Yeah.
about being strategic with our effort. By minimizing friction in certain areas of our lives, we free up time and energy and mental space to focus on those pursuits that bring us joy, meaning a sense of accomplishment.
This is really making me rethink how I approach this whole idea of the law of least effort. It's not about being lazy or avoiding challenges altogether. It's about being mindful and directing our energy toward what truly matters.
And I think this also ties into this whole idea of finding flow in our work. When we're engaged in activities that challenge us just enough, they're stretching our abilities without overwhelming us. That's when we enter that flow state where time kind of seems to disappear and we're completely absorbed in what we're doing.
Yes, that feeling of being in the zone where everything just clicks. It's such an amazing feeling.
And often those moments of flow, of deep engagement and focused effort, are where the most creative breakthroughs and innovative ideas emerge.
So it's not about effortless creativity, but finding that sweet spot where effort becomes almost effortless because we're so deeply immersed in the process.
You got it. It's about striking that balance between challenge and skill, pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zone, but also finding that groove where the effort feels almost effortless.
We started this whole deep dive by exploring how we're wired to seek the path of least resistance. We've looked at how this principle shows up in every corner of our lives. But what I'm realizing now is that this isn't just about efficiency or laziness. It's about understanding our own nature. It's about finding those things that ignite our passions, that challenge us in meaningful ways, and then using this principle to create an environment where we can truly thrive in those pursuits.
I couldn't agree more. It's about working with our natural tendencies, not against them, to craft a life that is both fulfilling and meaningful.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. We've journeyed from the historical roots of the law of least effort to its potential to shape our future. What are some final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with as we wrap up this deep dive?
I think as we navigate this complex world with all its demands and distractions, it's so crucial to be mindful of our energy and our effort. The law of least effort isn't a call to apathy or laziness. It's an invitation to be strategic, to identify what truly matters to us, and to design our lives in a way that supports our growth, our well-being, and our ability to make a positive impact.
I love that. And for me, a key takeaway from this deep dive is that it's not about avoiding effort. It's
Yeah.
about understanding that certain kinds of effort, those that are aligned with our values and passions, can be incredibly rewarding and even in a sense effortless.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where challenge meets mastery, where effort transforms into flow, and where we can tap into our creative potential to live a life that feels both purposeful and aligned.
This has been a truly thought-provoking conversation. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the law of least effort.
It was a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
And to our listeners, until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep striving to create a life that feels both effortless and meaningful.